Jetzt spricht zu Ihnen der bekannte New Yorker Rundfunkberichterstatter Mr. Dirk Brinkley über die Gräuelhetze in Amerika.
Ich spreche leider nicht Deutsch, aber sehr gut Englisch.
Sagen Sie mir, Mr. Brinkley, ist denn tatsächlich drüben in Amerika gegen das neue Deutschland eine so unsinnige Propaganda eingeleitet worden?
In America, we've had many reports against your new government, and in most cases, this has caused hasty demonstrations everywhere.
Also ist doch eine solche Propaganda drüben gewesen. Und sagen Sie mir, Mr. Brinkley, muss man befürchten, dass diese unsinnige Propaganda in Amerika fortgesetzt werden wird?
I can now say to you that the American people today realize that these stories are untrue and without foundation.
Das ist ja recht erfreulich, dass man sich in Amerika von der Haltlosigkeit dieser Hetze überzeugt hat. Und Sie, Mr. Brinkley, sind jetzt zu uns gekommen, um sich selbst von den Zuständen im neuen Deutschland zu überzeugen.
Oh yes, I'm an old visitor of Germany, and I have come here so as to talk over the radio from Germany to America, that the true facts can be given to the American people so that they will have the story of today and what's going on here.
Wenn es also der Zweck Ihres Hierseins ist, Mr. Brinkley, Ihren Landsleuten in Amerika von den Zuständen im jetzigen Deutschen Reich zu berichten, so sagen Sie mir doch, welche Eindrücke haben Sie jetzt von dem neuen Deutschland gewonnen?
I find that there's a new, fresh vitality here in Germany under your great leader and Chancellor Adolf Hitler, of whom I'm a great admirer. The new Germany will live, for you have the best centralized government in the world today. Ich finde, heute herrscht in Deutschland Ruhe und Ordnung.
That was Doug Brinkley in a broadcast published on the German newsreel on the 26th of April 1933. I will let Brinkley's words speak for themselves. Clearly, there was plenty that he could have observed, but clearly chose not to. Brinkley was even referred to at the Nuremberg Trial when defence lawyer Horst Pelckmann referred to him on the 22nd of July 1946 whilst he was defending the role of the SS in Nazi Germany. Whereas the German commentator appears to say Dirk, I presume his name was Doug, which sounds quite similar. Brinkley was born in 1890 and continued to be a Nazi apologist, even when it should have been absolutely clear which way the country was heading. In 1935, after this interview was done, Doug Brinkley stated in a speech in the United States that Hitler is now the most beloved man of the German people who have joyfully accepted his leadership. Brinkley painted Germany as a world where the problems of the Great Depression had ceased to exist, and to do that he cited Germany's official unemployment data, which showed that unemployment was then at 1.8 million, indicating a general improvement in the internal economic conditions. It needs to be pointed out, of course, what unemployment was in other countries in 1935. Brinkley implied that the solutions of National Socialism surpassed those of the Roosevelt administration, leading to a healthier German nation. But more important than anything else, according to Brinkley, was the fact that in present-day Germany, every man is on a footing of equality with one another. In that speech, Brinkley described a context where the introduction of National Socialism could easily solve the contemporary problems of the United States. The American Nazi Party grew in strength in the 2 years following Hitler being granted power by wealthy conservatives. Between 1933 and 1935, paying membership increased from approximately 500 members to 6,000. Obviously, this number is nothing when compared to the population of the United States. However, it could be quite significant when organising street marches, riots and social disorder. 2 articles had appeared from the Jewish Telegraph Agency dated the 6th of April 1934 and the 4th of June 1934 concerning Brinkley. On the 6th of April 1934, the Jewish Telegraph Agency reported that Brinkley considered Ernst Hanfstaengl the best diplomat in the service, whilst urging him to be allowed to visit the United States. On this occasion, Hanfstaengl's proposed visit was cancelled, but Hanfstaengl did later visit the United States as a refugee from Hitler. I don't know if he saw Brinkley after his change of mind on how good Hitler's policies were. Brinkley claimed that he was not paid by the Nazi government. In another speech, he claimed that France had nothing to fear from Germany's militaristic ambitions. Brinkley painted the Reich as the land interested intensely in promoting universal peace. As for the tanks and guns observed at German army manoeuvres and said to be violating treaty provisions, Brinkley said that they were only dummy tanks and the guns were made of wood. As it happens, at the time he made this speech, he might have been right on what the weapons were then made from. There's no doubt that the German army did train with dummy weapons up to around 1935, possibly even later. Brinkley also claimed that the National Socialist Revolution of 1933 was accomplished without bloodshed, bringing peace and plenty. Well, here he's ignoring what brought about this, what he called revolution. Hitler was appointed by wealthy conservatives in order to hide their corruption. Now, I've done a video on this subject. Now, Brinkley mightn't have been aware of these conditions, but of course, if he did a little bit of investigation, he could have found this out. There was nothing secret in the way that Hitler came to power and why these wealthy conservatives needed to hide their own corruption related to funds given to help eastern parts of Germany. It also needs to be pointed out that the standard of living that Germans enjoyed in 1928 was not surpassed in West Germany until the 1950s. Brinkley probably would have known, or maybe he did not, as he may have had little to no contact with normal people. He admitted in this interview that he couldn't speak German. Even genuine foreign journalists in Germany had a much higher standard of living there in the 1930s. And as far as this is concerned, I refer you to William Shirer's Berlin Diary, where he describes his life there. Now, it needs to be pointed out that William Shirer did have a relatively positive attitude towards Hitler at the beginning, although he swiftly changed his mind. Time will come when the whole of Europe will be grateful to Hitler, said Brinkley, the only leader in Europe with the courage to save the world from the menace of communism. Adolf Hitler is a leader in action such as the world has never seen. In less than 10 years, the world will be praising him as they are now praising Mussolini, who in the beginning was also criticised. Well, yes, 10 years after this speech, the world was, of course, at war with Hitler. Among the principal beneficiaries of Nazism, he stated, was German labour, for the funds of trade unions were not confiscated, but used to develop the rights of German workers. Here I'm directly quoting. And that is completely untrue, and once more he should have known this. On the 2nd of May 1933, the Nazis raided the offices of the trade unions, closing them down, detaining some of their leaders, and stealing their property, much of which ended up in the private possession of leading Nazis such as Robert Ley. The interview that this video started with was published in the very same month that the first boycott of Jewish businesses occurred. But, not unsurprisingly, Brinkley once more failed to notice that. In a speech, he said that Jews had monopolized professions and other occupations. He said in 1934 that Jewish lawyers continue to be admitted to the bar in Berlin, that Jews are unhindered in business, and numerous Jewish nightclubs, coffee shops and department stores are in evidence and patronized. The Jews come to Germany from other countries, stay there until their material condition is improved, and then move to America and elsewhere, Brinkley charged. Germany has always been anti-Semitic, admitted, and today it is being reforged for the Germans. Germany's side could never be properly represented in the foreign press, which is under Jewish control. Well, that's his opinion, of course. I inquired with both Jews and Gentiles, he said, and I neither saw nor heard of a case of cruelty or brutality. He also attacked the Brown Book of Hitler Terror, a publication which came out attacking the Nazi system around the same time that he was making these speeches. He allegedly visited concentration camps where he discovered no Jews, the prisoners all being communists, who he claimed are excellently treated and provided with modern sanitary arrangements. Now, I don't know which concentration camp he claimed to have visited, if he indeed did visit any of the concentration camps. Now, at this time, there's nobody inside these camps uniquely for being Jewish. There was some other charge, such as they were a member of the Social Democratic Party or something like that. But it's completely untrue to say that the people in the camps were all communists, because there was plenty of people, even from the centre-right parties by this time, who were in concentration camps. Although it is true that the majority of concentration camp prisoners appear to have been communists at this time. As for Nazi labour camps, said Brinkley, they are very similar to our own Civil Conservation Corps. They help men and women, boys and girls to readjust themselves. The camps are not militaristic, they are merely redeeming thousands from destitution. They might well be imitated in any country, Brinkley felt. Now, he said a number of things also, which I'm going to actually quote him now directly. In fact, I'm quoting the Jewish Telegraph Agency, which claimed to be quoting him. I don't believe there was a single starving soul in Germany this winter. The German Christian movement is by no means all bad. Sports are encouraged. It's a splendid sight. Men and women seeking escape from economic conditions in lakes and rivers. Well, that is true, that sports were encouraged because physical fitness was seen as a positive thing in Nazi Germany and communist countries, which incidentally is one of the very few things I think is better in dictatorships than in democracies. But Brinkley did let something slip here. He said that the people who engaged in sport were trying to escape economic conditions. And whose economic conditions? These are the Nazi economic conditions that they're trying to escape in sport. Hitler has been almost infallible. In will and spirit, he's one of the strongest in the world. Church attendance is higher in Germany than ever before. And I don't know if that's true or not. In times of difficulty, people often turn to the church. And so I can say from my own experience, in the 1980s in Poland, the churches were absolutely packed. And that is not the case today. Brinkley also claimed, Hitlerism means an era of justice and work. Success of the German experiment will be profoundly felt in America. Hitler can look the German people in the eye. Well, he did in the 1930s, but he stopped during the war. He didn't want to have any contact with the German people whatsoever, unlike, for example, Churchill, who did go and meet people. Although Stalin was exactly the same as Hitler. He didn't want to meet any of the Soviet people either. National Socialism is the foundation of peace, said Brinkley. Well, I'm sure you can think of some conflicts they might have started. Hitler has raised the German people from the dead. He has a warm heart, is loyal, courageous, religious. His salary he turns over to the unfortunates and lives entirely on the money from his writing. It's true that Hitler took no salary. He didn't turn it over to the unfortunates, but he didn't take any money from the state. Well, that's the propaganda picture. However, he did take a commission on the use of his portrait on stamps, something his predecessor had a right to do, but never did. Furthermore, purchases of his book were almost obligatory by local government and the Nazi Party. Newlywed couples were given a copy at the time of the marriage. Thus, the grift that Hitler used made him an absolute fortune. And you might be able to think of one or two other politicians in our own time that like a spot of grift from time to time. In an article written by Brinkley and published in the 30th of May 1934 issue of the Deutsche Zeitung, he claimed that in order to understand the position of the German Jew, he lived for weeks in a hotel owned by Jews and had cultivated the acquaintance of educated Jews whose sympathies are with the Hitler government. Unfortunately, he did not say who they were nor where they lived. Brinkley stated in mid-1934 that 1,200 Jewish lawyers of an original total of 2,000 in Berlin had survived the Hitler accession, that Jewish department stores and entertainment resorts had not been affected, and that the Germans have never been able to get their side told truthfully in the foreign press, most of which is under Jewish control. Of course, it needs to be pointed out that this article is written well before Kristallnacht, but the interview I started this video with was published after the boycott of Jewish businesses. Brinkley was clearly blind to the economic suffering that occurred as a direct result of Nazi economic policies, from the long work hours and the theft of savings for military use. When Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland and France fell under Nazi rule, German citizens did their utmost to buy or steal everything that they could to make up for the shortages at home. Brinkley might have seen some of the holiday camps and other facilities provided by the DAF, but at the same time must have known about the corruption that went alongside it. Brinkley appears to have stopped his agitation in favour of Nazi Germany by the time the war started, and he kept a very low profile from then on. He died in 1970, just too early to see him jump back into fame when The World at War came out and used this interview in its first episode. Of course, there are many people like Brinkley today, probably far more than there were in Brinkley's day, and regrettably some of them are even in positions of government. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you found that interesting. I've got lots of information on Nazi Germany, its beginnings, why it came to power, and some of the people involved in it. I upload every Tuesday and every Friday at 2000 hours my time. I'm based in both Poland and Germany, and unlike Brinkley, I can speak the languages of the countries I am reporting about. So, if you find this sort of thing interesting, you might want to subscribe. For the moment, all the best from me, and bye for now.